My name is Jack Hedin. I'm the founder, owner, and operator of Featherstone Fruits and Vegetables here in southeast Minnesota, now approaching 30 years in business. We grow certified organic fresh fruits and vegetables, feeding hundreds of thousands of people throughout the upper Midwest. One of the keys to our success is that we are lucky enough to manage a truly exceptional piece of farmland. This video is an introduction to this field. The farmland in question is located in the driftless area of southeast Minnesota, approximately 3 miles west of Rushford in Fillmore County. This is the Root River watershed, and in this area, the valley that the river has carved is more than a mile wide. Our vegetable warehouse is located in this area, surrounded by commercial development. The Root River flows on the very south side of this wide valley and frequently floods right up to State Highway 16. But the farmland north of the highway is protected from flooding by the highway bank itself. Fresh market fruits and vegetables require the very best optimal conditions in the field to produce a reliable crop year in and year out. I've spent 35 years growing organic vegetables from Pennsylvania and California, returning to the Midwest 25-30 years ago. We have rented dozens of fields within a 10-mile radius of this one in search of those optimal conditions. Only here have we found that unique mix of topsoil, subsoil, hydrology, and topography that make it possible to produce such a dependable crop of high-quality fruits and vegetables year in and year out, wet years and dry years alike. In 2008, when we built our vegetable warehouse here, the conventional row crop farmer who had been renting the ground for a decade told me that this particular field was the most dependably productive of all the 3,000 or more acres that he managed in 4 counties in Minnesota and northern Iowa. And what works for 260 bushel corn works for fresh market vegetables too. Through drought years like 2012 and wet years like 2016 alike, I began to understand that the land we are farming here is extraordinarily and uniquely advantageous for agriculture. From a layman's perspective, this particular area of the Root River drainage offers deep black silt, naturally high in organic matter, which produces tasty, nutritional vegetable crops. But the topsoil is underlain by coarse sand subsoil, which allows the entire field to drain like sand. And all this is in a mile-wide expanse of floodplain, which offers critically important and rare air drainage, which is also key for vegetable crop health. This is the magic of this field for farming. No grower I have ever spoken with anywhere in the country has ever described anything as advantageous for raising crops of any kind, particularly vegetables. But this field is zoned for commercial development. So several years ago, I began exploring ways that it could be protected for agriculture. And I began my search on this by going to the University of Minnesota, where I was fortunate enough to encounter Dr. Nick Jelinski, one of the nation's preeminent soil pedologists. I asked Nick whether this condition is truly as unique as I think it may be. And he and his team got to work right away researching this, using soil samples, borings, having visited the farm many times, and then comparing with GIS and GPS statewide maps of soils throughout the region to answer this fundamental question. Is what I experience as so optimal for agriculture here as common or as uncommon as I think it may be? Or do these sorts of fields and these conditions exist elsewhere in the state? How unique is this particular spot? What Dr. Jelinski and his team posited early on is that the Root River once swung widely to the north of our current field and remained there for thousands of years. This created a horseshoe-shaped oxbow in which upland sands and silts were deposited in flood events over many millennia. When the river finally returned to the south side of the valley, and then the railroad grade was built in the 19th century, it left the broad, dry, former floodplain that we are lucky enough to farm today.
My name's Nick Jelinski. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Soil, Water, and Climate at the University of Minnesota. And I'm a soil scientist, specifically a pedologist. So I study how soils form, why they look the way they do, and basically how we can make better soil maps. I met Jack in 2016, and since that time I've been really fortunate to enjoy Jack's hospitality at Featherstone Farm. I've taken a group of students every single year since 2016, even during the pandemic in 2020. And we've investigated soils across the landscape in Jack's farm and Featherstone Farms. What we've found over the last 5 or 6 years of taking classes down there and investigating those soils is that actually the soil on the floodplain where Featherstone Farm's main operation is really unique. So it's mapped as a Waukegan soil series. Which is interesting because actually on the St. Paul campus, we also have Waukegan soils mapped, and they're mapped throughout the state. The central concept of the Waukegan soil is basically loess, which is wind-blown silts, over outwash, glacial outwash, which tends to be coarser sands and gravels. And that's true across most of the state. It's also true in the Root River Valley where Featherstone Farms is located, but the properties are pretty different from the other Waukegan type soils that we have across the state, including the Waukegan soil we have on our St. Paul campus. Most of the Waukegan soils in the state are about a meter or so of silts, loess, windblown silts, over those sandier, gravelier, glacial outwash materials. On the floodplain of the Root River, where Featherstone Farms is located, what we see is much thicker, so almost 8 feet maybe of silty materials, again, all deposited by the river mostly, not loess. And that means that those silty materials are not only thicker, but they also tend to have more organic matter in them. Some of them were deposited in oxbow, parts of the river that were cut off, and so there was a little bit more organic matter deposition as they were being deposited. We've found shell fragments, all sorts of things that indicate water deposition for those silty materials at Featherstone Farms. There are sands and gravels below. Those sands and gravels, however, are likely also river deposited. So they're also not glacial outwash, but alluvium, again, from the Root River. So overall, that sort of unique brand of Waukegan that we've explored and described in the Root River Valley, where Featherstone Farms is located, we've done some GIS analysis across the state to figure out, okay, how much of this unique brand of Waukegan is there across the state? And what we've sort of found is not much. I mean, most of it would be limited to the driftless area in southeastern Minnesota. And what we've seen is that a lot of that is really only in the wider parts of the river valleys in the driftless area, which are actually relatively rare. So it's not only the soil, but also the landscape at Featherstone Farms that's pretty unique. That sort of unique blend of landscape and soil and creating that unique brand of Waukegan soil, that part of the Root River Valley, that wider part of the Root River Valley, is probably making up 15 to 20% of that unique brand of Waukegan in the state. So 1/5 of those unique soils in the state are accounted for in just that part of the Root River Valley right by Rushford. So there are a lot of other Waukegan soils mapped in our state, but those Waukegan soils are going to have very different properties than the ones that are in the floodplain by Featherstone Farms.
Having farmed this particular field for nearly 15 years, I can say with great confidence that it is the very best area for growing fresh market vegetables that I have encountered anywhere in the upper Midwest. Research at the University of Minnesota has confirmed through regional mapping how truly rare this condition is. And yet this field is zoned for commercial development. Please help me and others at Featherstone Farm to protect this unique resource from development so that it can produce food for people in perpetuity. Thank you.